Hello and welcome to Glanbia's Dairy Focus Vodcast. In this week's episode we will hear from Glanbia Technical Advisor Maeve Regan on feeding the dairy cow during the autumn. We will look into parasite control in Youngstock in the later stages of the grazing season, and I would like to focus your attention on the free dairy cow consult that is available through AHI. Are you a milk recording herd? Is your bulk tank cell count consistently below 200,000? And are you looking to reduce the amount of antibiotics used in your herd? If the answer to those three questions is yes, yes and yes, then you could be eligible for a free dry cow consult organised through AHI. ICBF will contact eligible milk recording herds to make sure that they can avail of this consult through their own vet. This consult will go through the dry cow management, and it will look at how the dry period is suited in controlling mastitis in your herd. And if need be, it will flag certain tweaks and changes that can be made to improve that performance. It will also look at the overall mastitis control in the herd, and it will set you up in moving towards the selective dry cow therapy, in which not every cow in your herd will receive an antibiotic when it comes to drying off. And some cows will be dried off without the use of antibiotics, which is something that is going to come in from January 2022 for all herds, where we will have to prove the use of an antibiotic is necessary in cows that are getting the treatment. So make sure you follow up on the text message from ICBF or that you contact AHI to sign up for the free dry cow consult. Now, let's go to Glanbia Technical Advisor Maeve Regan for an update on feeding the dairy cow during the autumn.
As we move into the final shoulder of the grazing season and towards later lactation with cows, the focus should shift now in order to set ourselves up, be it the platform and the cow, to have a good back end and a successful spring. In regards to body condition, we want to manipulate, and it's best practice to manipulate body condition score prior to dry off. The most cost-effective way of doing this is trying to build body condition score for any under-conditioned cows during late lactation, as opposed to try and manipulate body condition score once we've dried off that cow. Then when we turn our attention to looking at the milking platform and setting it up in order to extend out the grazing season, this back end, and set up the milking platform to have sufficient grass next spring for early turnout. We've been on about building average farm cover and building covers for the last number of weeks, and we should be aiming to hit peak average farm cover from mid-September to the 1st of October, depending on your stocking rate on the platform. But we also want to ensure that we optimise milk output over the next number of weeks and maintain lactation persistency. We don't want to see any drops in volume or output, and again the key figure to have to hand is that lactation should not decline any greater than 2.5% per week from now to the end of the lactation period. When we want to obviously optimise our intakes at grass, we want to have good quality grass in front of the grazing mob at all times, and we want to make sure that our cows are achieving good residuals. We want to hit those residuals of 4 centimetres in order to avoid carrying over dead material over that winter period and into next spring. And then obviously we want to make sure that the cow is well maintained and her energy and output requirements are met at all times. It's also important to remember this time of the year that you're on the correct feed in order to allocate your cow the correct CalMag rate and full rate of minerals and trace elements for this time of year. When we talk about supplementation rates then at grass, it's all going to be very dependent on cow type, grazing conditions, weather conditions, grass quality, and many other factors that might be playing out on farm. But if we take the typical spring calf and cow giving us 20 litres at the moment, she'll have a supplementation requirement of approximately 1.6 kilos of concentrates, where grass quality is high and grazing conditions are ideal. However, if we have a higher output cow and a typical cow giving us 25 litres of milk output per day, that cow will have a requirement of 3.6 kilos of concentrate intake per day. Again, where grass quality is high and grazing conditions ideal. During the month of September, where grazing conditions might become slightly tougher and dependent on weather, our grass quality might take a dip, and that same cow with a 20 litre output with poor quality grass ahead of her would have a concentrate requirement of between 2.5 and 3 kilos of concentrates. But also that higher output cow, that cow given 25 litres, would have a requirement of between 4.5 and 5.5 kilos of concentrates at grass where poor conditions arise. Again, at this time of year, every farm scenario will be different. Every herd type will have a different requirement. For tailored advice, contact your local Glanbia Ireland representative.
As we're heading into the later stages of the grazing season for Youngstock as well, we need to consider stomach worms and lungworm. In many herds, those two have caused some issues over the last few months as conditions have been ideal for both stomach worms and lungworm. And the idea is that near the end of the grazing season and going into the housing, that we actually clear out the worms from the calves so that they go through the winter virtually free of these parasites. What you need to consider first of all is how have the calves performed over the previous grazing season. Are you happy with the way the calves have grown in their first grazing season and maybe in their second grazing season? Did your maiden heifers reach the growth targets by the start of the breeding season, and how did that breeding season go for that group of animals? Would you have seen scour or coughing in calves during the grazing season? Those questions will give you an idea of what the exposure has been for your calves to parasites and how much it has affected their performance. Now, if you're very happy with the way the calves have performed, they've reached their growth targets, they're in good condition, you haven't seen coughing, there is no scour there, then maybe parasites aren't a problem in your herd, or potentially you've been overdosing the calves. And that leads to another problem where calves have not been exposed enough during the grazing season this year, and that could give them issues in the next grazing season because of underexposure to worms and not having built up any sort of immunity against those. If you really want to know whether issues that you have seen in your herd are caused by parasites, the easiest thing to do is do fecal testing. And that really is step 2 in your parasite control. Fecal egg count testing can be carried out on a pooled sample of about 10 calves, and it will show you the sort of parasite exposure for that group of calves since their last dosing. And it will show you the current parasite burden that those calves have to deal with. The third step is the actual dosing and what to do. For a lot of herds, going into housing is an ideal time to dose. And for Youngstock, you actually have the option across the full range of products. So the clear wormers, the white wormers and the yellow wormers are all available to Youngstock. But you do have to be careful that some products are not suitable for calves that have a future career as a dairy cow, and some products are not suitable for pregnant dairy heifers, the same as they wouldn't be for dry dairy cows. The products that you could use do have an impact on the type of parasite burden the calves will have during the winter. And as a housing dose, the clear wormers are probably better suited as they will kill off all stages of stomach worm and lungworm. So there are no inhibited or hibernating larvae left in the animals through winter that might cause issues early in the spring. Now, an added benefit of the clear wormers is that they have a persistent action of a few weeks, which means that in the weeks following dosing, they will still kill off worms that are taken up by the calves. Now, if you give a clear wormer at the moment of housing and the calves don't go outside again anymore, that really doesn't matter. But it does give you the option of giving what's called a pre-housing dose. So a few weeks before the calves actually go into the housing, you can give them this clear wormer, and it will still cover them for the next few weeks that they're still grazing, and then they go into the housing virtually free of parasites still. There's two benefits to that. One is that as the calves are still grazing, but they've been cleared of parasites, they get an added benefit of growth based on the grass diet alone. The second benefit is that if there has been a bit of lungworm damage done to the lungs, the lungs still have a few weeks' time to recover from that while outside before going into the housing, where there always is a bit of a higher risk of contracting pneumonia, for example. So consider using clear wormers and something longer acting, such as moxidectin or doramectin, about 4 or 5 weeks before the calves are due to be housed. You dose them then, and it will cover them for the next couple of weeks before they go into the housing. Thank you for watching. And if you want any more information on any of the topics covered in this episode, please contact your local Glanbia representative or log on to glanbiaconnect.com.